Welcome. If you're unsure whether you will move abroad at some point, whether for work, retirement, or simply a new chapter in life, one question remains critical. How do you build a strong financial strategy even when you're no longer living in Germany? In today's video, I will show you how to create a solid, future-proof financial plan, one that protects your assets, secures your retirement, and gives you peace of mind no matter where in the world you choose to live. This isn't about risky trends or overnight wealth. It's about structure, long-term thinking, and practical steps you can actually follow. Let's get started. So we have different, I would say, options to invest. We have on one hand, real estate. So the question is, what happens with your real estate investments if you leave Germany? Same applies to, let's call them investments. So all about stocks, ETFs, mutual funds. Then we need to talk about, insurance. And we also need to talk about taxes. Okay, what happens with your taxes on real estate income, for example, if you leave the country? So let's start with real estate. Besides moving abroad at some point, I would highly recommend that you have a property management. Because either you have a house that where you lived in yourself, so it might make sense to rent it out if you leave Germany. At that point, you should have property management. Or you already have apartments that you rent out, and then still you should have property management already, even if you're already or still living in Germany. Okay? So this is for real estate. You have property management. What does that mean now? Well, it doesn't matter where the property is located, and it also doesn't matter where you are located. Because let's say you're living in Berlin and the property is in Leipzig or Potsdam, for example. Okay, it will make sense that you manage the property yourself because probably you don't have that much time yourself anyways. Okay, so in that case, property management is taking care of all the issues with tenants. If they have any questions, if there is any issue, they just call the property management, they solve it for you, and that's it. So now it doesn't matter where you live, if you live in Berlin or if you go back to your home country, because property management is taking care of everything. You just need to make decisions, but you can make decisions via phone or via mail. It doesn't matter where you live. Okay? That's for real estate. So I don't see any big issue here if you own real estate in Germany. You should probably have at least, I would say, difficult to say, but if you have 3 to 5 years that you would like to stay in Germany, then it definitely makes sense that you consider buying an apartment in Germany because you save taxes as long as you're working in Germany. And if you're, let's discuss the tax topic a bit later, okay? So this is real estate. Then we have investments. What happens with your investment portfolio if you leave Germany? Well, as long as you have a European bank account, it's all good. And it's pretty easy to maintain a European bank account with N26 or Revolut, for example, even if you're not in Germany anymore. Same actually also applies to rental income. As long as you have a European bank account, it's also pretty easy for the tenant just to transfer the rent to that European bank account. Okay? So it doesn't matter where you live. For investments, stocks, mutual funds, I would say it only makes sense if you invest for a longer period, in general, to generate profits. But let's say you might leave Germany in 5 years, then I would definitely recommend that you have an investment portfolio. Okay? If you say, you're leaving in 1 year and you move to another country and you would like to stay long term in that country, then I would say, okay, leave the investment for now. It's about 1 year, just do everything properly in the country you live in at that point. But the question is, how likely is it that if you leave Germany, that you stay in the next country long term? So at some point you have to make a decision, and at some point you need to get started, because otherwise you're paying opportunity costs. So actually you lose money. So this is for investments. There's also no problem at all. So if you keep investing, doesn't matter where you live, and it's not quite clear that you leave in 1 year and you stay the next country long term, then I would recommend to get started with investments in stocks and mutual funds as soon as possible, actually. Then we have insurance. We can also take pension here. So pension actually makes sense if you stay in Germany for 10 years. Then it definitely makes sense. If you leave Germany later, you just stop the contribution. The money you have invested still compounds, and then you receive the pension or the lump sum, depends on the pension scheme you choose, to your bank account in any country. So there is also not a big problem here. You have in the pension plan acquisition costs over the first 5 years, typically. So it doesn't make sense to go for a pension if you leave Germany in 2 years, okay? But if you say you plan to stay long term, maybe for the next 10, 15 years, I would highly recommend that you consider a pension plan, okay? Stop the contribution, money compounds, you receive the whole value, for example, at some point in any country. So this is for a pension. If you leave Germany after 10 years, it might even make sense that you still contribute. Let me explain why. So let's say you would like to stay in Germany for the next 5 years only, but then you might stay in another country also only 5 years. And then in the third country, you also only stay 5 years. At some point, you should have a pension strategy and you should save particularly for that pension, just because you have certain benefits which you don't have if you just put that money directly in stocks. So if that's the case and you say, well, it's not quite sure where I'm living to and how long I stay there, then I would also recommend that you have, it's called a flexible pension plan. And then you can contribute from all over the world. And probably if you want to have a safe pension, then Germany is a good country in comparison to other countries where the money is secured just from legal perspective. Okay? So you can still contribute, depends on the scheme, totally depends on your situation, what we would recommend at that point. But you're quite flexible here, especially when it comes to contributions. Okay, that's for pension. For insurance, well, for private health insurance, if you're in private health insurance, it might make sense that you keep your health insurance for a certain time if you leave the country, just to be secured in another country where you might not have any health insurance immediately, just so you're protected if there is any sickness. Okay, you can keep that, but generally, if you leave Germany, you can cancel all your insurance policies immediately, okay? You could cancel. If you have, for example, an occupational disability insurance, so you would like to protect your income in case of any long-term sickness, then you could even keep that insurance because you have worldwide protection. But in general, I would probably say, well, private health insurance, maybe for the transition, you keep it. Then you switch to a new health insurance scheme or system in another country. If you have liability, legal insurance, whatever, you just cancel it. Okay? Now, taxes. What is interesting here? Real estate is always taxed in the country where you own real estate. Or let's say mostly, according to the double tax agreements Germany has with most of the countries. Okay, and especially if you leave to another country to still work there, then it's quite likely that there is a double tax agreement. And in most agreements, it's mentioned that real estate is taxed in the country where you own real estate, which means your taxation of your real estate income remains in Germany, which is not a big deal. The only disadvantage is you still, let's do it here. So real estate, you still need to do a tax declaration in Germany. However, for real estate, it's not like a big deal. And if you did it once, then it's super easy because you just have one income position, you have rent, and then you have full tax deductible expenses or positions, mostly with depreciation, management, interest, and any potential renovations or something like that. So it's not that difficult. If you know once how it works, then you have more or less always the same numbers in every year, and you just submit the tax declaration. Again, it's Meanwhile, even possible with TaxFix, for example, that you can file taxes for real estate income. So it's really not a big deal, okay? If you have tax benefits out of real estate, okay, let's say you receive tax refunds of 5K annually. If you own real estate in Germany and you leave Germany, you wouldn't receive the 5K because you can't offset the tax benefits of real estate with your German income anymore. But what you could do is that the tax savings are more or less, let's say, saved. So if you generate such high profits with your real estate investments or with the real estate investment itself, it would offset. So let's say in the first 5 years, you have tax benefits of X amount, but in the 6th year, you have such a high income out of your rental income, so you would have to pay taxes. But since you didn't receive the tax benefits anymore when you left Germany, they will offset it until these tax benefits are not there anymore. Okay? So let's say you have minus 5,000 euros in year 1, then you leave Germany, and then it's saved every year. And at some point when the rental income grows, you actually have to pay taxes at some point, but then you earn more money. And then they would say, okay, in the past years we had minus from tax perspective, so we will wait until this minus is over. Okay, I hope this was clear. Real estate. When it comes to investments, well, investments, stocks and mutual funds are taxed in the country where you live and not where you own these assets. So if you live in France, for example, you would have to pay capital gains tax in France, but that's not like a big deal because in Germany everything is recorded properly. So you would just receive a statement which you can just submit to the French tax office, and then that's it. It's also not like a big deal. So this is also sorted. Then we have pension. Well, pension will be taxed in Germany, but this is good because you have tax benefits even if you're not in Germany anymore. And you still are investing in euros, which is a pretty strong currency in comparison to many other currencies out there. So this is also not a big deal. You don't have to worry about that at all. Even if you receive the benefits, they would just tell the tax office automatically your profits, for example, and then it's sorted. So for example, if you go with this flex plan, 50% of the capital gains are entirely tax-free. So it makes sense. And when it comes to insurance, well, this is probably not interesting because you cancel the insurance anyways. Okay, and this is how it works. So you can still consider real estate. You can still consider stocks. You might still be able to consider a pension plan and it still makes sense in your situation. So don't be too afraid to get started, and please don't leave that much money on the table because you think that it's not worthwhile. But now you see, if you plan everything correctly, you have property management, you just maintain a European bank account, you still can have a long-term pension plan, even if you're not in Germany anymore. So it makes sense if you plan it correctly. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more content on long-term wealth building, financial security, and smart investing, especially for those living beyond Germany's borders at some point. And if you're planning your own move or want a second opinion on financial strategy, feel free to leave a comment or reach out directly. Thanks for watching, and as always, plan wisely and invest with purpose.